If you find it difficult to gain and finish hours-long 8 to 10 podcasts per week, please subscribe to most advanced, featured, and accurate quick podcast summaries on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. You can start with free trial, which lets you listen all the podcasts and later, just for the price of candy in most places. The conversation starts with a question about how effective companies will be at dragging people back into the office after the lockdown. Rory Sutherland thinks that the UK has returned to a pretty acceptable equilibrium, but notes that there are exceptions, particularly in the tech industry, where offices are still very empty. Rory mentions that the level of absenteeism is much higher in the US and Canada than in the UK, which is surprising given the strong culture of presenteeism in the US. He attributes this to the widespread dispersion of people to distant locations, making it difficult for them to commute to the office. They use Slack to communicate, but when they brought the team together for a meetup, 3 people asked for a pay rise the week after. This highlights the importance of non-critical conversations that happen in person, which can't be replicated in a digital environment. Rory notes that this is an example of the divide and rule strategy, where companies can control their employees by keeping them separate and preventing them from comparing notes. He also mentions that one agency sent their staff on assertiveness training, and half of them resigned afterward. The conversation turns to the topic of remote working hardware, and Rory expresses disappointment that there hasn't been more investment in this area. He mentions a project called Google Starline, which is a 3D video conferencing system, but notes that offices are still not equipped to handle the frequency of video calls. Rory also talks about how technology can change people's behavior, citing the example of electric cars. Once people experience the convenience of electric cars, they don't go back to traditional cars. He also mentions that early adopters of technology often pay a price, but that this can also drive innovation.
Chris Williamson asks what this suggests from a consumer behavior standpoint, and Rory responds that it suggests that there is a price that needs to be paid up front. He notes that early movers in an industry often need to pay the most money in terms of marketing to break into the market.
Rory also talks about how technology can change people's perceptions of what is normal. For example, once people experience the convenience of downloading music, buying CDs seems ridiculous. Similarly, once people experience the flexibility of remote work, commuting to an office can seem painful.
Chris Williamson asks what this suggests about consumer behavior, and Rory responds that it suggests that people are willing to pay a price for convenience and flexibility. He also notes that early adopters of technology often drive innovation, even if they pay a price for it.
The conversation turns to the topic of productivity, and Rory notes that people are more productive when they have some degree of autonomy to control their environment. He cites the example of writers, who often have specific conditions under which they can and can't write. He argues that this is also true for other forms of knowledge work, and that giving people some degree of autonomy can make them more productive. Rory also talks about how business has imposed various things on people, such as open plan offices and email, without investigating the effect on productivity.
He notes that the second people start to enjoy flexible working, everyone becomes concerned about productivity. Chris Williamson asks Rory what he means by saying that we're too impatient to be intelligent.
Rory responds that this is a question about whether we need slow AI, slow Tinder, and slow Rightmove. He argues that in most processes of search, people refine their preferences according to what they find out there, and that slow technology can actually be beneficial in this regard. If you want to listen to the complete summary, please subscribe to Quick Podcast Summaries on Spotify and Apple Podcasts for less than the price of candy in most places. Happy listening.